"You've been hiding money from us," my sister screamed at Thanksgiving dinner. I cut them all off immediately. A week later, she tried to forge my professional certificates. I never intended to hide my success from my family, they just never bothered to ask. For 35 years, I lived in the shadow of my younger sister, Bethany, the golden child, the one whose smallest accomplishments were celebrated like Olympic victories while my achievements collected dust on the shelf of parental indifference. It wasn't that I craved attention. I'd long ago accepted my place in the family hierarchy, but I did expect a basic level of respect that never materialized. Growing up in our middle-class suburban home, the pattern was established early. When I made honor roll every semester in high school, my parents nodded absently. When Bethany managed to pull her grades up from C to B for a single marking period, they took the entire family out for a celebratory dinner. The message was clear. Extraordinary was my baseline, and anything less than miraculous from me wasn't worth acknowledging. My college graduation from Cornell with a double major in business and gemology, earned through scholarships and part-time jobs, coincided with Bethany's acceptance into community college. Guess which event dominated our family conversations that month? My parents drove 4 hours to attend my ceremony but spent the entire time discussing Bethany's exciting new chapter. I sat silently as they planned her dorm decorations over my graduation dinner, which they insisted we cut short so they could get back to help her prepare for orientation. The pattern continued when I approached them for help with my first business loan. I had apprenticed for 3 years at Jenkins Antique Jewelry, learning authentication techniques from one of the most respected gemologists on the East Coast. I had saved nearly $30,000, had an impeccable credit score, and needed just $15,000 more with cosigners to secure a small commercial space. "We just don't think playing with old jewelry is a sustainable career path, Evelyn," my father said, not even looking up from his newspaper. Meanwhile, they had co-signed Bethany's car loan the previous month and helped with the down payment on her condo the year before that, despite her spotty employment history and maxed-out credit cards. So I did what I had always done, figured it out myself. I worked longer hours, took on authentication side gigs, lived in a studio apartment with barely functioning plumbing, and ate ramen for dinner more nights than I care to admit. 6 months later, I secured the loan on my own and opened Authentic Heritage Jewelry appraisals in a tiny corner shop with just enough room for my equipment and a small display case. The business grew slowly but steadily. I built a reputation for accuracy and integrity, specializing in estate jewelry authentication that larger auction houses eventually came to rely on. By year 3, I had hired 2 apprentices and moved to a larger location. By year 5, I had expanded to authentication services for major insurance companies and private collectors. Year 7 brought expansion to 3 cities and a staff of 15 specialists, all trained under my exacting standards. Through it all, my family remained oblivious to my success. They called my business Evelyn's Little Jewelry Shop and made jokes about dusty trinkets. Not once did they visit my flagship store, even after I relocated to a prestigious address in the financial district. At family gatherings, they directed conversations toward Bethany's latest drama, her revolving door of boyfriends, her frequently changing career aspirations, her financial struggles that somehow never seemed to improve despite multiple fresh starts. What they didn't know, what I never told them, was that I had been anonymously supporting them for years. When Bethany's husband Chad lost his job during the recession, the mysterious monthly deposit of $7,000 that appeared in their account wasn't from a class action settlement, as they assumed. When my parents' retirement fund took a hit during the market downturn, the financial advisor who found an overlooked investment that restored their losses was working on my instructions. I didn't need recognition, I just couldn't bear to see them struggle when I had the means to help. "We're so blessed that Chad's settlement came through," my mother would say during family calls. "He's such a good provider." Or, "Bethany is so generous, she sent us to Cancun for our anniversary." The credit always went elsewhere, but I didn't mind. Financial security was my gift to them, given without strings or expectations of gratitude. Then came last Thanksgiving, the day everything imploded. I had invited everyone to my home, a historic brownstone in an upscale neighborhood. The property reflected my personal aesthetic, understated elegance with museum-quality restoration. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed wealth, just quiet good taste and quality that the discerning eye might appreciate. My family, of course, had never been discerning when it came to me. Dinner was almost ready when I realized Bethany wasn't in the living room with everyone else. I found her in my home office, rifling through papers on my desk, my laptop open in front of her. In her hand was a quarterly statement from my wealth management firm, the one documenting my net worth of just over $42 million. Her face contorted with an emotion I couldn't immediately identify, shock certainly, but also something darker, something predatory. "You've been hiding money from us all these years," she hissed, gripping the paper so tightly it crumpled in her fist. "While we've been struggling to make ends meet, you've been sitting on a fortune." Before I could respond, she stormed into the dining room where our parents, Chad and their 2 children, were already seated. She slapped the crumpled statement onto the table, her voice rising to a pitch I'd never heard before. "Our sister is a millionaire, a multimillionaire, and she's been watching us struggle for years without saying a word." The table fell silent. 3 sets of eyes turned to me with expressions ranging from confusion to dawning calculation. My mother recovered first, her voice quavering with what anyone else might mistake for emotion but I recognized as opportunity. "Evelyn, how could you? We're family." The betrayal in her voice would have been more convincing if I hadn't seen the same performance when she was angling for Bethany's husband to invest in her short-lived candle business. My father's approach was more direct. "You owe this family. After everything we've sacrificed for you, this is how you repay us, by hoarding wealth while we've had to pinch pennies." I stood at the head of my table, the turkey growing cold, the expensive wine untouched, and felt a strange calm settle over me. In that crystallizing moment, I realized they didn't see me, they never had. They saw a resource, a means to an end, a bank account with legs. "Sacrificed for me?" I repeated, my voice steadier than I felt. "Name one sacrifice, one time when my needs came before Bethany's, one instance when you supported my dreams the way you've supported hers." The silence that followed was deafening. They couldn't answer because there was nothing to say, no defense against 35 years of evidence. "The monthly deposits into your account," I continued, looking directly at Bethany. "The mysterious financial advisor who fixed Mom and Dad's retirement fund, the college funds for your kids. Did you think that money appeared by magic?" Recognition dawned on their faces, followed immediately by recalculation. If I had been helping them already, how much more could they extract now that the full extent of my wealth was exposed? Bethany recovered first. "If you have that much, you can afford to really help. Chad and I need at least $2 million to even the playing field after everything we've been through. It's only fair." My mother nodded eagerly. "And we should have a proper retirement fund. $5 million would secure our future. You wouldn't want your parents worrying about medical bills in their old age, would you?" My father pulled out his phone, already making calculations. "Plus we'll need to distribute something to your cousins. Family takes care of family." I took a sip of water, buying time as something shifted inside me. The last fragile thread of familial obligations snapped, replaced by a clarity I had never experienced before. I would no longer set myself on fire to keep them warm. "The anonymous support ends today," I said quietly. "You've shown me exactly who you are and what I mean to you. I won't be treated like an ATM by people who couldn't be bothered to take an interest in my life until they saw a financial statement." The explosion that followed was nuclear. Shouting, tears, threats about real family and blood obligations. Chad puffed up his chest and declared they would take what they were owed if I wouldn't be reasonable. My mother collapsed in theatrical sobs. My father called me selfish, ungrateful, heartless. Bethany's children watched wide-eyed as their parents revealed a ugliness they'd likely never witnessed before. When they finally stormed out, leaving my carefully prepared dinner untouched, I felt lighter than I had in years. But that was just the beginning. The next morning, the texts started rolling in. First from extended family members I barely knew, offering investment opportunities that were thinly veiled handout requests. Then from Bethany, alternating between rage and tearful appeals. My parents left voicemails hourly, their tones swinging from righteous indignation to wounded vulnerability. I blocked them all and went to work. 3 days later, Chad showed up at my flagship store, causing a scene in front of clients. Security escorted him out while he shouted about family betrayal and hidden wealth. My social media accounts were flooded with comments from relatives and family friends, the narrative clearly established. Evelyn, the secret millionaire, had turned her back on family in need. I tried briefly to extend an olive branch. I offered family therapy, a controlled environment where we could discuss healthy boundaries and expectations. My mother called it paying a stranger to take your side. I suggested we table money discussions for 6 months while rebuilding our relationship on more solid ground. My father called me delusional if I thought they could just pretend to be poor for my comfort. The harassment escalated. Bethany showed up at my home at midnight, pounding on the door until neighbors threatened to call police. Anonymous negative reviews appeared online for my business, all suspiciously similar in their complaints. A rumor circulated among industry contacts that I was under investigation for tax fraud, a dangerous accusation in a business built on trust and reputation. Then came the counterfeiting scheme that I should have seen coming. During a tense family dinner I had foolishly agreed to in hopes of reconciliation, I noticed Bethany lingering in my home office while supposedly looking for the bathroom. That evening, I felt uneasy enough to check my professional equipment and discovered one of my authentication stamps was slightly out of place. I made a mental note to install security cameras but didn't immediately connect the dots. 3 days later, my senior authenticator mentioned that someone claiming to be my sister had called asking detailed questions about our certification process, claiming she was helping me research upgrades to our system. When I confronted Bethany by text, she dismissed it as innocent curiosity about my business. I didn't believe her, but without proof, I could only increase security protocols at the office. A week after that, a prestigious auction house contacted me about irregularities in certifications bearing my company's mark. The forgeries were amateur. Bethany had clearly not inherited any of my attention to detail, but the timestamps matched perfectly with her visit to my home. The potential damage to my reputation was incalculable, and the premeditated nature of the scheme chilled me to the bone. That was the final straw. I retained both a security firm and a top-tier law firm specializing in harassment and defamation. Cease and desist letters went out. Security systems were upgraded at my home and businesses. Documentation of every text, email, and unwanted visit was meticulously compiled. When Bethany violated the boundaries again, showing up at my home with Chad to talk sense into me, the temporary restraining order was already prepared. The family narrative shifted again. Now I was using my wealth as a weapon, sicking lawyers on my own flesh and blood. The irony that they had escalated to literal criminal activity, forgery, and defamation while playing the victim was apparently lost on them. My mother called mutual friends in tears about her cold-hearted daughter. My father told extended family I was mentally unstable and needed intervention. Through it all, I maintained my composure publicly while privately documenting everything. I directed my wealth management team to trace the anonymous support I'd been providing and found that less than 20% had actually gone to the stated purposes. Bethany had been skimming from the family support for years, funding lavish vacations and shopping sprees while crying poverty. Even after all this, I found myself wavering one night. My mother had left a tearful voicemail about my father's supposed heart scare, which I later discovered was merely elevated blood pressure during a routine checkup. For a moment, I sat with my finger hovering over the transfer button in my banking app, old habits urging me to swoop in and solve their problems. I had drafted an email to my financial advisor to arrange a one-time emergency fund when a notification popped up on my phone, a message from Bethany to a mutual friend that had been accidentally sent to our old family group chat. Mom's working the heart angle with Evelyn. If she caves, I've got my eye on a vacation property we could all use. Dad thinks we can get at least $50K for medical expenses, lol. The message disappeared within seconds as Bethany realized her mistake, but it was enough. I closed the banking app, forwarded the screenshot to my attorney, and finally accepted that financial support would never be just that. It would always be feeding a cycle of manipulation and entitlement. Sometimes love means walking away, even when every instinct screams to help. 6 months after Thanksgiving, the restraining orders became permanent. Bethany and Chad's forgery attempt resulted in criminal charges that were only dropped when they agreed to move out of state, an agreement facilitated by my attorneys with the stipulation that they never contact me again. My parents, facing the sudden reality of living on just their actual retirement income, downsized from their sprawling house to a condominium and took part-time jobs to supplement their income. Meanwhile, my business thrived. The authentication work expanded to include museum consulting and a specialized insurance product for high-end collectors. I established the Heritage Foundation, providing scholarships and apprenticeships to promising students from disadvantaged backgrounds interested in gemology and antiquities preservation. 1 year after the Thanksgiving implosion, I received a letter from my parents. The familiar handwriting on the envelope made my stomach clench, but I opened it anyway. Inside was not an apology but a list of health concerns and financial woes, followed by a thinly veiled request for reconciliation that centered entirely on their needs and included no acknowledgement of their behavior. I didn't respond. 2 years out, I heard through mutual friends that Bethany's marriage had collapsed under financial strain. Chad had apparently left her for a younger woman with family money. My parents had been forced to cancel their annual Florida winter escape and were suffering terribly from the cold northern winter. The subtext was clear: look what you've done to them by enforcing boundaries. I sent anonymous donations to the heating assistance program in their county, ensuring elderly residents wouldn't freeze, but maintained my distance. In the quiet moments, I sometimes questioned myself. Had I been too harsh, too absolute in my separation? But then I would remember 35 years of calculated indifference, of being valued only for what I could provide, and the doubt would fade. I hadn't cut them off over one bad Thanksgiving dinner. I had finally recognized a lifetime pattern of exploitation and refused to perpetuate it. 3 years after Thanksgiving, my therapist asked a question that stopped me cold. What would reconciliation look like to you, not to them, but to you? I realized I had never considered this. What would I need to see from them to believe change was possible? A recognition of the favoritism that had shaped our family dynamic, acknowledgement of the harassment campaign they had waged, genuine interest in me as a person rather than a provider. The answer crystallized. I needed evidence they could see me, actually see me, as a full human being with inherent worth beyond financial support. Without that fundamental shift, any reconciliation would inevitably revert to the same toxic patterns. Last month, a small jewelry box arrived at my office with no return address. Inside was my grandmother's garnet ring, the one possession I had truly wanted from my parents' home, not for its monetary value, but because she had been the only family member who had ever truly seen me. Alongside it was a short note in my mother's handwriting. This always should have been yours. I don't know what this means yet. If it's another manipulation or the first genuine acknowledgement of my value apart from my wealth. I'm not rushing to reconcile, but I've scheduled a call with my therapist to discuss what boundaries a tentative reconnection might require. What I do know is this: I am no longer the family ATM or the invisible daughter. I've built a life filled with meaningful work, chosen family who value me for myself, and the quiet confidence that comes from finally standing in my truth. Sometimes the strongest foundation is built on the ruins of what you thought you couldn't live without. Healing happens in unexpected ways. 6 months ago, I received a letter from my father, the first direct communication since the restraining orders became permanent. Unlike my mother's previous attempts, this one contained no requests, no veiled manipulations, just a simple acknowledgement. I failed you as a father, and I'm sorry. 2 weeks later, he showed up at one of my public lectures on Art Deco jewelry authentication. He sat in the back, didn't approach me, and left before I could spot him. My assistant later told me he had purchased my book and asked her to have me sign it if it wouldn't be too much trouble. I did, adding a brief note: "Thank you for coming." We've had coffee twice since then in public places with clear time boundaries. He's in therapy, he tells me, learning about narcissistic family systems and his role in maintaining them. My mother still believes I should let bygones be bygones without acknowledgement or amends. Bethany remains in another state, occasionally sending manipulative messages through mutual acquaintances that I politely ignore. I don't know if true reconciliation is possible with any of them. What I do know is that I no longer feel the ache of their absence like a phantom limb. My chosen family, friends who celebrate my successes without calculation, colleagues who respect my expertise, the promising young gemologists I mentor, have shown me what genuine connection feels like. My worth was never determined by what I could provide. It took losing my family to find myself, and while that path has been painful beyond words, I wouldn't trade the woman I've become for any amount of hollow family harmony. Sometimes the most precious things we authenticate aren't gemstones, but our own value. My family didn't book me a room on family trip, so I left. That's when my sister's lavish life fell apart. I'm 33 and I've spent my entire adult life trying to prove myself to a family that never saw my worth. As a research director at one of Chicago's leading pharmaceutical companies, I've built a life I'm proud of. My high-rise apartment overlooks the city skyline, a daily reminder of how far I've come. I'm more than comfortable, and I've done it all on my own. No handouts, no family connections, just pure determination and an unwavering focus on my goals. The path here wasn't easy. I worked through college on a partial scholarship, taking night shifts at a local pharmacy to make ends meet. While other students were partying or taking spring break trips, I was buried in textbooks, determined to graduate at the top of my class. My parents never understood this drive. Why push yourself so hard? They'd ask. You should be focusing on finding a husband, starting a family. It was as if my ambitions were somehow threatening to them, a deviation from their prescribed script of what a woman's life should look like. But in my family's eyes, none of that matters. My sister Catherine has always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. A former flight attendant turned stay-at-home mom, she's mastered the art of appearance over substance. Her Instagram feed is a showcase of designer bags, luxury vacations, and picture-perfect family moments. Every post is meticulously staged, her daughter Amy in pristine private school uniforms, weekend brunches at exclusive restaurants, yoga sessions in designer athletic wear. What her followers don't see is the reality behind those glossy posts, a lifestyle completely dependent on our grandfather's monthly support, covering everything from her $5,000 mortgage to Amy's $30,000 annual private school tuition. They don't see the maxed-out credit cards, the bounced checks, or the frantic calls to grandfather when unexpected expenses arise. Catherine has perfected the art of living beyond her means while maintaining an image of effortless affluence. Our parents eat it up, though. Mom, a former beauty queen who never quite got over her glory days, sees Catherine as the daughter who properly followed in her footsteps. Dad, a mid-level insurance executive who spent his life trying to keep up with the Joneses, beams with pride at Catherine's apparent success. They've bought into her facade hook, line, and sinker, treating her lifestyle as the pinnacle of success while my achievements might as well be invisible. I've learned to live with it, to accept that no matter what I accomplish, it will never measure up to Catherine's theatrical performance of having it all. Our grandfather, though, was different. A self-made success in construction, he built his empire from the ground up, starting with a single truck and a handful of loyal workers in the 1960s. He understood the value of real achievement, of building something substantial rather than just maintaining appearances. He's the one who taught me about investments, about building real wealth instead of just the appearance of it. While my parents fawned over Catherine's latest designer purchase, he would sit with me for hours discussing market trends and business strategies. When he invited the whole family to spend Thanksgiving at the Breakers in Palm Beach, I thought maybe things would be different. Surely, in such a setting, my family would finally see me as an equal, as someone who had earned her place at the table. I should have known better. The moment I walked into that luxury hotel, reality came crashing down. The receptionist's polite confusion as she searched for my reservation was the first sign something was wrong. I'm sorry, Ms. Walker, but I can only find reservations for your family members. There seems to be no room booked for you. My mother's response when I called her was like a slap in the face. Oh, we just didn't think it was necessary for you to have a room. You're not married, you don't have children, and we thought you'd be fine with staying with us. The dismissive tone in her voice made it clear. I wasn't considered important enough to warrant my own space in their perfect family holiday tableau. Then Catherine showed up, strutting through the lobby like she owned it, her luxury bag swinging from her arm. The smug satisfaction on her face told me everything I needed to know before she even opened her mouth. Oh, sis, finally made it. Her voice dripped with false sweetness. Actually, I only made reservations for me, my husband, and my daughter, and mom and dad, of course, just the real family. Just the real family. Those words hit me like a physical blow, but they also sparked something in me, a realization that had been building for years. I didn't say a word. I simply turned around, wheeled my suitcase back through those ornate doors, and walked out into the bright Florida sunshine. Behind me, I could hear Catherine's voice rising, probably already planning how to spin this drama for her social media followers, but I didn't look back. I was done. In the taxi to the airport, my phone exploded with messages. Catherine's came first, a barrage of guilt-tripping texts about how Amy had been looking forward to seeing her aunt, how she'd planned to post the perfect family Thanksgiving on Instagram, how embarrassing it would be to explain my absence. Then came the emails from our parents, each one more cutting than the last. We could have added another room, but as Catherine said, we prioritized the real family, my mother wrote. If you can afford it, why not get another room? With your salary, it shouldn't be a big deal. Why are you being so emotional? You've always been like this, Helen, always making everything more difficult than it needs to be. My father's message was even worse. Catherine has a family, a husband and child, you understand, right? Can't you just quietly put up with it for Thanksgiving? That's always been your problem. Only thinking about yourself, never considering the family. Your sister works hard to maintain our family's image, and you're just being selfish. But before I boarded my flight back to Chicago, I made one call to my grandfather. I explained everything that had happened, sticking to the facts, not asking for sympathy. His response was brief but loaded with meaning. "I understand. I'll handle this from here." What happened next sent shockwaves through our family. My grandfather, it turned out, had been watching this dynamic play out for years, gathering evidence of Catherine's financial dependence and our parents' enabling behavior. He had quietly documented every loan, every bailout, every credit card bill he'd covered. While Catherine was posting about her self-made success, he was building a detailed record of her financial reality. Within days of the Thanksgiving incident, he made several decisive moves that would change everything. First, he cut off Catherine's monthly support completely and immediately. The facade she'd built came crashing down spectacularly. Without his financial backing, she could no longer maintain her carefully crafted image of luxury living. Her Instagram posts suddenly stopped and reality began seeping through the cracks. The designer bags disappeared from her photos. The luxury vacation posts were replaced by quiet weekends at home. Her followers started noticing the change, commenting with concerned questions about her sudden shift in lifestyle. Catherine tried to play it off as a choice, a move toward authenticity and minimalism, but the truth was impossible to hide completely. Then came the restructuring of his will. He made it clear that his assets would be divided based on personal responsibility and achievement, not family politics. The majority would go into a trust that would be managed by me, with strict conditions about how the money could be used. Catherine would receive a much smaller portion, contingent on her finding employment and showing financial responsibility. Our parents' inheritance would be similarly structured, tied to specific conditions about financial management and family dynamics. The aftermath was nuclear. Catherine's perfect world continued to unravel. Without our grandfather's support, she had to downsize dramatically. The private school tuition became impossible to maintain. The luxury car was replaced by a sensible sedan. Her husband, who had grown accustomed to their lifestyle of luxury and had never really developed a career of his own, filed for divorce when the reality of their financial situation became clear. She eventually had to move from her showcase home in the suburbs to a modest apartment and, for the first time in her adult life, look for a job. Her Instagram following plummeted as the aspirational content dried up. Some of her most loyal followers sent concerned messages, wondering what had happened to the luxurious lifestyle they had come to expect. Others, perhaps sensing the facade crumbling, quietly unfollowed. Our parents tried to salvage the situation, but their resources were limited. They had always lived beyond their means, counting on my grandfather's generosity. Now they found themselves having to adjust to a new reality where their golden child couldn't maintain her glossy facade. Mom's calls became less frequent, and when she did call, she was subdued, the judgment in her voice replaced by a kind of confused uncertainty. As for me, I threw myself into my work with renewed energy. Free from the constant drain of trying to prove myself to my family, I excelled even more in my career. 6 months after the Thanksgiving incident, I was promoted to senior research director with a substantial raise in equity in the company. I led a team that developed a breakthrough treatment for a rare genetic disorder, work that actually made a difference in people's lives. My grandfather and I grew closer, our weekly dinners becoming a tradition I truly cherish. He shares stories of his own struggles with family dynamics, of choosing integrity over appearance, and of building something real in a world obsessed with facades. Through him, I've learned that sometimes the strongest family bonds aren't the ones we're born into, but the ones we choose to nurture. I expanded my social circle, joining professional organizations and making friends who valued substance over style. My apartment became a gathering place for what I now call my chosen family. Colleagues, mentors, and friends who celebrate real achievements and support each other through genuine challenges. We have regular dinner parties where the conversation flows freely, touching on everything from scientific breakthroughs to personal growth, without any need for pretense or performance. Catherine occasionally reaches out, usually when she needs something. Her texts are different now, less commanding, more hesitant. Sometimes she asks for advice about job hunting or managing a budget, skills she never had to develop before. Part of me wants to help her to be the bigger person, but I've learned that maintaining boundaries is crucial for my own well-being. Our parents still try to guilt me into conforming to their expectations, but their words no longer have power over me. Mom still sends the occasional passive-aggressive text about how families should stick together, and Dad sometimes forwards job listings for positions closer to home, but I've learned to let these roll off my back. I've found my own definition of family, and it's stronger than any blood tie could ever be. The aftermath of that Thanksgiving changed more than just our family's financial dynamics. It transformed how I see myself and my place in the world. I no longer measure my worth against Catherine's artificial standards or our parents' warped expectations. I've learned that true success isn't about maintaining appearances or pleasing others. It's about being authentic and building a life that aligns with your values. Last month, I received an invitation to Catherine's small, private wedding to a high school teacher she met at a coffee shop. No designer dresses, no luxury venue, just a simple ceremony in our grandfather's backyard. I haven't decided if I'll go yet, but the invitation itself speaks volumes about how much has changed. Maybe in time we can build something real, not the perfect family facade we used to maintain, but something honest with all its flaws and complications. Sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is walk away from the people who are supposed to love us unconditionally when that love comes with too many conditions. It's not about being selfish, it's about preserving your sense of self-worth and creating space for authentic relationships to flourish. That Thanksgiving at the Breakers turned out to be a gift, not the one I expected, but perhaps the one I needed most. It showed me that sometimes losing a real family is the first step to finding something much more valuable, yourself. And in the end, that's worth more than all the designer bags and Instagram followers in the world.